Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you? It is Thursday, September 8th, 2016. Time for yet another show. Wow, what a whirlwind of activity today. It's a little warm in here. Turn the fan on. Hopefully that won't interfere with the show very much. It's a warm one. It's a hot one. It's back to summer. Of course, the pools are closing just in time for the really hot weather to settle in. And things have gotten hectic in the Kagro in the Morning World Headquarters with the kids. First of all, we're all suffering from some sort of outbreak of awful bug bites. We were out in the woods over the weekend chasing their Pokemon, and something got to us, and I guess it came home with us too. So I'm not normally bothered that much by them, but I'll just take 5 and 10 minutes off here to scratch every once in a while, and you all discuss things among yourselves. Also, we have entered the orthodontic phase for the older of the two, and that's slowing them down a little bit. The normal breeze through breakfast and vitamins and packing of the lunch has become a new exercise in, well, what can he eat? What can he eat? What can't he eat? What's going to get stuck in this dental work? There's a lot of work ahead of us. So for the next 2 years, we'll be complaining about sore gums and teeth and tightening things. It's something every parent looks forward to. And, of course, it's not a cheap procedure either. So, hey, what fun. But we haven't even gotten to the extractions yet, so that's coming up next. Although now we're researching. We're going to have a couple of extractions, and then, of course, if you look up anything on the internet, somebody tells you the opposite of what your doctor tells you. Don't pull any teeth out. You can absolutely make room for any, the head's designed, the jaw's designed to hold this number of teeth. You don't have to extract anything. I don't know. Makes me nervous when you hear stuff like that, but it also makes me nervous to think, I should just do some research instead of going to dental school. Just 10 minutes or so. People get their, I don't know, everybody I talked to who had braces had a story about that. Oh, yeah, I had to have some teeth pulled, or at least I didn't, but my brother did, or someone else did, or our kids. It doesn't seem all that unusual, but it does. They know how to scare you online. And say, don't believe it, don't believe the hype. And so it becomes like vaxxer, anti-vaxxer material. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't rise to that level. But I don't know. Our dentists and orthodontists appear to know what they're doing. Many people go there and have their teeth fixed. So we're just getting ourselves nervous for no good reason. Well, I mean, it's always good to get nervous about your kids. Anyway, that's what's happening in the world. Most of the world is talking about orthodontia, usually. But Bill says something else is going on. Bill says Daily Coast Radio is live now. He's correct about that. Kagro X, that's me. I'm definitely here. Comforts NSA officials suffering from TIBS for short, Trump Intel briefing shock. I might as well. They're going to need some treatment if they need some orthodontic treatment. I got a guy. Anyway, yes. There was the Commander-in-Chief Forum yesterday. I heard about it just before it actually began. A couple hours before. I think, Greg, you mentioned yesterday that they were going to have this Commander-in-Chief Forum. So that's how I found out about it.
Yep.
And they had it. And they had 2 people show up for it, despite the fact that only one of them is actually, qualified to be Commander-in-Chief. The other guy showed up.
Actually, 3 people showed up, and only one of them was qualified to be there.
Oh, that's true. They did have a moderator.
No, they had Matt Lauer.
That's the guy. He took those credentials that said moderator on him. Somebody else maybe
had a vast amount of experience asking all sorts of people for summer recipes.
Yes.
And he put that experience to use last night.
I heard that was terrific. I didn't get to see it as usual. I was busy scratching.
And, I watched. And you know what?
Yeah.
We learned a lot of things.
I heard.
We learned that Matt Lauer's an idiot. We learned, he was asking, I saw Twitter was trying to paraphrase this. But essentially, it was along the lines of, Mrs. Clinton, how would you prevent Armageddon? You have 10 seconds. And Mr. Trump, what did you think of the movie Armageddon?
That's about how the questioning went. It was, and very, very shortly after it was done, most journalists even were saying, yeah, this definitely came out lopsided in terms of.
Well, partly because Lauer did not call out Trump at all for any time that he lied, which was basically the half hour that he was on. To be fair, the people doing this should have given each candidate a full hour. Trying to get all of these questions in a half hour is really tough, especially when Lauer decided to take the first 10 minutes and just ask Clinton about emails. She had a reasonable answer, which, of course, because they were tough questions, and they're going to be, about that particular topic, she answers them. People who are trying, like Kristen Welker on MSNBC, who are trying to slant this, say, well, Clinton was on the defensive about the question. No, she was being asked hard questions, and she answered them. Being on the defensive is when you try to avoid answering the question. That's not what happened last night on the Clinton side. On the Trump side, he flat out started by lying about his position on Iraq, and Lauer, totally unprepared, didn't call him on it. I was always against the Iraq war. Complete lie. Because he was on Howard Stern and said he was for it. He was for Syria. Nobody called him on this, which is to say Lauer didn't, and just let him ramble on about a whole bunch of stupid stuff. Now, the only advantage of letting Trump ramble on about stupid stuff is that Trump says stupid things. Like, I will reduce my generals to rubble because even though I have a secret plan for the war, what I will do is I will ask the generals to tell me what to do within 30 days. What about your secret plan? Well, that is my secret plan, is to ask everybody else for their plan, because I don't really have my plan.
Well, that's how he develops properties.
Well, but if the generals are so smart and they are going to tell you what to do, then what's wrong with the generals that we have now telling Obama what to do? What's the difference? Well, our generals are terrible now. I will reduce them to rubble, as if the commander-in-chief is the one who appoints generals and then removes them.
Well,
that's not how it works.
I mean, he can do the rubble part, though.
Right, and then they brought up issues. It was a military forum, so they brought up issues from the audience about important issues that for the veterans there, whose questions were way better than Lauer's. Questions about what do you do about the fact that there's rape issues in the military, and
yes.
Trump basically said, well, we really need courts in the military.
That would be a good idea. Like
as if he didn't have any already. Maybe, I mean, just complete ignorance of everything.
Yeah.
He was asked.
Pretty astonishing.
I'd be giving you a half hour's worth of summary if I told you every stupid thing that he said.
I got time.
But the thing is, you have this entire lopsided, Trump's an idiot, Clinton at least knows her material, whether you think she's on the defensive or not.
True.
And Lauer is an awful moderator.
No.
And then, after it's done, the New York Times writes it up, has a fairly decent piece by Alex Burns, and thanks to our friends over at News Diffs, we can actually see what happens. So Alex Burns writes up a reasonable piece about what happened, which was published at 9:51 p.m. after it's done. Clinton and Trump taking turns at TV forums, spar on foreign policy. That headline will remain. And Burns writes, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump outlined sharply different visions of American national security, but in back-to-back appearances, both candidates struggled to put to rest the most urgent questions, dodging their campaign. Mrs. Clinton parried a series of questions regarding use of private email servers, Secretary of State, and Mr. Trump pressed to defend his inconsistent policy views and lack of conventional training for the presidency. He was repeatedly evasive, which was reasonable. Talked about the fact that he spent a lot of the evening being a Putin fanboy. And what happened is that was completely erased. Totally, completely erased. They removed the Burns story an hour later and put in a Patrick Healy story, which was completely vanilla, didn't mention anything terribly uncomplimentary about Trump, and removed all of the references about Putin.
Oh. Did they not happen?
They happened. But, it just was completely gone. So here, thanks to our News Diff people, you can actually look and see the differences between the story when it first appeared and when the story appeared a little bit later. And then
colors.
Matthew Gertz has this nice piece about how everybody was noticing this, passing this around, slamming the New York Times for doing this. And then the Healy story is re-edited to put back some of the stuff that was originally taken out. So words that weren't there before in the Healy story now appear, such as Mr. Trump was withering in his attacks on her record while, here's what's added, vague about his own and defensive about his shifting stance. Then it's added, he repeatedly declared he was ready to handle national security issues without being challenged, which is what happened. That was not in the Healy story. And what was back in, which was originally taken out from the Burns story, was especially insistent in defending his praise of the Russian President Vladimir Putin, arguing that Mr. Putin had an 82% approval rating in his country. I think when he calls me brilliant, I'll take the compliment. Okay, Mr. Trump said. And so that was taken out after Burns commented on Putin. It was not in the Healy story. And then after getting slammed all night on the Internet, the Times puts it back in. And you scratch your head and say, what are they doing? This is just an awful bollocks of the entire night and a pretty good encapsulation of how the Times has horribly handled this entire election.
I don't get it. I would love to know just a simple answer. Why not 2 articles by 2 different people?
Well, we don't know, so I've written the public editor to try to find out. It's not fair to ask Burns. It's not fair to ask Healy, not that I would talk to him. But you have to ask the public editor that. So we did. We'll see what the public editor has to say about it.
I heard you could, even if you ran out of space on the internets, you could put another story if you wanted to.
Right. And so, one of the fascinating things, essentially, the Burns story wasn't rewritten. It was completely pulled. And one of the things that I saw last night, again, I'm relying on other journalists for this, but one of the tweets I particularly was struck by is Josh Barrow, who said, what on earth happened here? Where did Alex Burns' story go? And then, put up the news diffs piece. And then says, I'd note, unpublishing an entire news article would violate Business Insider's editorial standards, which is where he works now, and those of most publications. So it's a big deal that happened. And it's a big deal that happened at the paper of record.
I wonder, I'm curious about it mostly because I would love to know what they thought they needed to do it for. Why they couldn't run 2 stories. What was the giant emergency that required replacing one with the other? Was anybody in particular? I mean, was even the Trump camp? Like, did they say, "Shoo, we feel better now"?
Right. And so then they add a second story, which happens to be superb. And on the front page of the New York Times, it's actually running directly below the Healy story. So I'm going to send you the front page of the Times. You don't have to click on it for your clicks if you don't want to. But
it's too late.
The New York Times front page at the top, candidates offer sharp contrast in a debate preview. That's the dumb story by Healy. And then underneath, it says news analysis. They added this. Lauer, as moderator, presses Clinton but surrenders to Trump, by Michael Grimbaum. It's actually a terrific story. NBC's Matt Lauer found himself besieged by critics of all political stripes who accused him of unfairness, sloppiness, and even sexism.
Oh, my.
That's on the front page of the Times. And when you read the story, it has a much better summary of what actually happened at the forum than Patrick Healy's summary of the forum. Although the original Alex Burns was pretty good as well. So it looks like somebody made the decision to pull the Burns story, stick the Healy story in. It was terrible. And so then they put this story, rather than pull the Healy story and put the Burns story back, then they put this one in to kind of cover themselves.
That's weird.
It is very weird. And you scratch your head and go, I don't know what's going on here, but this is really strange.
I don't have an answer.
And, the bottom line is Trump was terrible, has sucked up to Putin all evening, did a really poor job of explaining what was going on, attacked America's military. Lauer was awful. And basically, I thought that was going to be the story this morning until Gary Johnson showed up on MSNBC for an interview on Morning Joe. Did you hear about that one?
Only right at the last minute. I saw
right,
people
hard not to. So he's on just something about the 8:30 hour. That's why it was right at the last minute. And Mike Barnacle is interviewing him. I sent the text in yellow That's my first item there it's a picture, but if you open it up there in Skype, Mike Barnacle, what would you do if you were elected about Aleppo? And Johnson says Barnacle said about Aleppo. And Johnson said, and what is Aleppo? And Barnacle says, you're kidding. And Johnson said, no. What's Aleppo? And Barnacle said, well, Aleppo's in Syria. It's the epicenter of the refugee crisis. And goes on to explain, Aleppo, ISIS, Oh, yeah, okay, got it, says Johnson.
Aleppo Marx.
Right, that's the thing. Aleppo was the missing Marx brother. So immediately what happened after that is that you have the chyron at the bottom with a picture of a deer in the headlights, a Dan Quayle style Gary Johnson. What is Aleppo? And the headline there is R.I.P. Gary Johnson for president.
Well, it wasn't going anywhere anyway. I wonder if he was wondering, is the word Aleppo, and you're asking me about one of them?
Yeah, what's Aleppo? I don't know what Aleppo is. How many Aleppos do you have to have?
Everybody be alert.
It was awful and completely disqualifying. But the sad thing is, the episode of watching Gary Johnson know nothing about foreign policy and looking at that and he said that, therefore it's disqualifying, only puts into highlight how Matt Lauer didn't ask at this military forum Trump any questions about Syria and why Trump's complete ignorance of everything foreign policy doesn't disqualify him.
Right.
And so, fascinatingly, the next half hour, 45 minutes after this happened on Morning Joe, you have to picture Republican Joe Scarborough and Democrat Mika Brzezinski and, the other people on the panel attempting to pretend that they're neutral. Right? And you have, I think they had Elise Jordan, who was a spokesperson for Rand Paul at some point. And Mika asks a very good question and says, for all of you people here who are horrified at what Gary Johnson just said, we all agree this disqualifies him. You cannot be president if you don't know anything about foreign policy. We agree on that. Everybody agrees. That's not even the question. What are you going to do now? Because all of you people who said you can't vote for Trump, who now feel that they were going to look at Gary Johnson as their safety valve, now can't vote for Gary Johnson. That's going to leave you voting for Hillary Clinton.
No,
why don't you just say it? And Joe Scarborough just exploded.
Oh.
And a 15-minute rant, which essentially boiled down to, you're trying to push us into saying that we're going to vote for Clinton. It's too early. We have 2 months to go.
It's too early.
Implication being, at the end, I will vote for Clinton. But don't tell me that now. I'm not ready.
Okay, yeah, I can believe that.
It was fascinating.
You know
because
what?
It was a window into the Republican mind in terms of the stuff that they are genuinely wrestling with. They know they're going to have to vote for Clinton. They don't want to say it publicly, and they're not ready to admit to themselves that that's where this is going. But as we talked about on this show months ago, if you are truly never Trump, that is your only alternative. Now, how long it takes you to get there, I don't know. But we did talk about this a long, long time ago, and that's the dilemma for the never-Trumpers. They hate it. They hate voting for Clinton. But you're going to have to vote for Clinton because the alternatives are simply unacceptable. So Scarborough said, I still have one more option. I can vote for nobody for president and just vote Republicans down the line. And maybe that's what I'll do. Don't tell me I have to vote for Clinton.
You know what? No. I mean, I guess you can do whatever you want, but I'll tell you, I wish I would, well, I always half wish I'm on the show, just so you can say that, you know what, oh, so you're going to, essentially, because this would tick him off to know, and I'm sure there's plenty of differentiation, plenty of space for differentiation. I'd love to have this argument and say, all right, so you're going to call in Kaepernick your ballot, your presidential ballot. You're going to turn around and say, I refuse. You're going to protest. Oh, I'm not going to participate.
Which is your right.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But, because he's been, I'm sure, crapping on Colin Kaepernick. Oh, no, what he's doing is totally...
Honestly, I don't watch the show enough to really know that. I generally just tune in for the first 10 minutes because that's the politics. At the beginning of each hour, they have a political summary. So if you don't want to watch the whole show, and if you don't want to spend the rest of the time, finding out what the Trump surrogates think or don't think, they have their within the panel discussion within the first 10 minutes of every. So you can turn on at 7 and get 10 minutes of what they think, and 8 o'clock and get another 10 minutes of what they think. And that's the most efficient way to do it. So I don't watch the whole thing, and I don't know whether they talk about the sports stuff. But I will tell you this: I saw a couple articles, and my Twitter feed tells me that particular protest is all over Talk Sports Radio, which is actually dealing with the issue. And there's a tremendous amount of support for this guy. In fact, his jersey is the best-selling NFL jersey right now. So the idea that dumping on him was a good idea, that's not working. He's actually winning.
Yeah. Well, the idea that dumping on him was a good idea is something that happens if you don't, if you only know white people.
Well, it's yes and no. I mean, I'm old enough to remember back in the 60s the old My Country Right or Wrong stuff. I mean, this is familiar territory here. Mm-hmm. And in this particular case, a heavy racial component to it, but that's not always the case. It's usually a stand up for the flag and whatever, and how dare you and this, that, and everything else, even though I just, do the same thing all the time myself, but that's not the point. You can't do it. Yes.
Well, there's
right, for example, somebody pointed out,
no doubt.
At the end of the Kansas City Chiefs warm up there when they have the national anthem, people sing Home of the Chiefs instead of Home of the Brave. Did you know that?
No.
But isn't that desecrating the national anthem?
Yes/no.
Yeah, exactly. So, whatever. But the mind into the struggling Republican, knowing that for all the propaganda about emails and Clinton Foundation stuff, which turns out to be nothing, when you have an actual crook who really does pay to play, and that story also having legs and still being carried in a lot of different ways about the Bondi Trump money play there. Despite the propaganda that you claim one side's a crook, the other side really is a crook. You claim one side is unqualified to be commander-in-chief. You know the other one is. Yeah. So you have this dilemma, and what are you going to do? And just seeing that expressed with the frustration of you're forcing me to make a logical decision that I don't want to make is just a fascinating look. Well watching if you ever get it on tape.
I will. I guess I'll find it somewhere. I've been watching. I think Anna Marie Cox has an interesting take on the Aleppo thing now that
how's that going? I didn't see that one.
She's just sort of casually observing, like, we're saying that essentially, I think I distilled this from what she's saying here, is that people are disqualifying Johnson, and you probably should, about asking, what's Aleppo? And whereas what's interesting is, that Donald Trump would have the same question. The sin was in saying, tell me, give me a reminder. Tell me what. I'm sure that afterwards, I would guess, Gary Johnson was like, well, Syrian refugee crisis. Okay, I'm there with you now. I spaced on Aleppo, or maybe I never knew what Aleppo was. Whereas Donald Trump would have said, as she's saying, I guess people are disqualifying Johnson over asking about Aleppo. Maybe he should have said something like, we've got to fix it. Believe me. Many people are saying Aleppo is a mess. I alone can solve.
Right. And that's how Trump would do it. And maybe somebody else, neither Trump nor Johnson, would have said, what specifically you're asking about Aleppo?
Yeah. What about Aleppo? What about Aleppo?
What about Aleppo? Says who?
Know what Aleppo is? Right. Yeah.
The polls, all of them. I mean, but you can dance around that if you're unsure and say, specifically, what's your question?
Yes. That's how an adult would do it.
Well, fine. But the truth is, he didn't know anything.
That's true. I mean, I have no doubt that he didn't know anything about it.
He went on. It was worse because after that, then Mark Halperin interviews him. Johnson? And he tries to explain. He knows he messed up on the Aleppo question and tries to explain. It's just a few minutes later, so they actually played that on the air, the audio of that.
Where was Johnson in all this? Is he facing a panel on MSNBC or whatever it was?
Well, he was for the first interview. He was live on Morning Joe and facing a panel, and Barnacle was the one that asked him the question.
And where's Halperin?
And then he leaves, and I guess they walk behind the stage. Halperin interviews him, probably for all things considered, all due respect, all my children, whatever they call that, 6 p.m. slot show that he hosts with John Heilman, and perhaps they'll play that interview later this evening. But it's recorded, and then Mika from her iPhone plays the recording of Halperin talking to Johnson directly after the interview. And Johnson still is clueless. And he realizes he screwed up and tries to explain how they asked him a place and it didn't occur to him. And there was this one other time they asked him a place and he didn't know where that one was either. And these things happen.
Right.
And unqualified.
Yeah. Well, that's not good for him. I'm just who's handling his
but
schedule?
then, okay,
He's
so if
talking
he
to
is
all these
unqualified,
guys.
and this makes the rounds as it's doing in social media this morning, where do his votes go? Right now he's taking more from Clinton than he is from Trump. And according to at least some of the polls, and one of the polls you can look at for this, I don't particularly care for the number here, but the USC Dornsife LA Times presidential election daybreak poll, the weird one that looks like Rand, that Armando and I talk about sometimes.
Okay.
That particular poll, I'm going to send you over to the URL. And if you click on that, it's called the Understanding America Study. Right. And then they have some subheaders, election forecast. And by the way, Clinton's leading in this poll now, which is highly unusual. It's usually a very Trump-favored poll. Trump has been doing very well for the last 2 weeks. But as of this morning, Clinton leads by a point. All right. The second header, if you click on it, is respondents' predicted winner. Are you with me?
Yes. Okay. I got to click too? Jeez. All right.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So if you click on respondents' predicted winner,
yes.
The people doing the poll, even though they favor Trump for most of the time that the poll has been in existence, ever since the conventions, most people, 55% or more, very steady, rock steady, think that Clinton's going to win. All right? Next, intention to vote by candidate. This is, are you going to actually show up?
Okay.
Clinton actually has a slight lead here. And then the fourth header that I want you to click on, because this is where it gets interesting, characteristics of candidate support.
Okay.
Right? And if you scroll down just a tad, you'll see that they break up their poll into the age 18 to 34s, the 35 to 64s, and the 65 plus.
Yeah, okay.
Right? The 35s to 64s are tied. They've been tied. It's been a solid tie since the beginning. The age 65 plus, as you might expect, favor Trump. All right? The fluctuations in this poll are almost entirely due to the 18 to 34-year-olds. And as of today, as compared to, let's say, August 30th, all right, in that group, Trump 42.9, and Clinton 39.3 as of the end of August. And now on September 7th, it's Clinton 47, Trump 36. That's a really wide variation. And as Clinton's numbers go up, it's because the 18-34-year-olds are deciding to vote for her instead of Trump. As Clinton numbers go down, it's because the 18 to 34s get a little skittish about her. Maybe a new email story came out. Maybe MSNBC is touting her being on the defensive, and Trump pouncing, the words they like to use whenever they do a Clinton story. And so her support goes down in that group. And so the LA Times poll fluctuates based on that. As of today, the 18 to 34 group is rising. Why is that important? That's where a lot of Gary Johnson's support is from. So as a microcosm of the country, if a lot of, I don't know if I can't vote for Trump. I don't know if I can vote for Clinton. Maybe not. I'm a very soft supporter. It's easy to scare me away from her. When that happens, I take my money out of the stock market and I go buy gold. I go with the steady, safe Gary Johnson. He's my third party choice, and I do that when I feel safe. Now that's being taken away because he's a jerk. So now what do they do? Do they go back to Clinton, or do they not vote? Unknown. But what I'm suggesting is that I think Clinton had a fairly bad 2 weeks in terms of polling, where the race, she still leads. We'll get to that too. But it's tightened, from the 7 to 8 point lead, let's say, on Huffington Post to a 3 to 4 point lead, or a 5 point lead on Huffington Post. And so there's been definite tightening, but I think it's been those soft supporters, and especially younger supporters, millennials and others, who otherwise might find Gary Johnson more attractive, or a third party more attractive. And now that's going to be taken away, and I think that you're going to find her numbers rising. And I think that the Commander-in-Chief Forum will remind people that there's a definite choice between the two. And if the polls really do get close, just like Mika was pushing the Morning Joe folks, you're going to have to make an actual adult choice and stop playing around. And Morning Joe's cry de core was don't make me do that this early. I still have 2 months before I have to make up my mind. But in the end, that's what's going to happen. And so I think that you'll start to see her poll numbers rising a little bit.
Okay. But angry people doing it.
Well,
They're upset with
grow up
themselves.
and make up your mind. One group is qualified, the other isn't. And so you're going to have to vote for the qualified person. The thing that Clinton has going against her is she is an absolutely positively traditional establishment candidate. And millennials don't like establishment candidates.
Yeah.
That's why they were voting for Bernie.
I guess so.
And so it annoys them that they have to go and they have to vote for this in the end because they swore that's not what they were going to do this time.
Yeah, I wasn't going to get a minivan.
Well, but it happens.
Right.
Because we have families, we have kids, and guess what? We have minivans.
Right. And, they work pretty well and they're comfortable and they hold a lot of stuff.
Well, you can fit groceries and the kids at the same time, so that's sometimes what you have to do. Meanwhile, Morning Consult comes out today with a 50-state poll. Hillary Clinton still leads where it matters. Hillary Clinton would top Donald Trump 321 to 195 in the electoral vote to clinch the White House if the election were held today, according to an extensive Morning Consult analysis of registered voters.
Don't make me hold the election today.
Yeah, exactly.
Why?
Firstly, it's registered voters.
So
Secondly,
angry.
it's online.
Okay. But
the online surveys tend to favor Trump, so this is really not a bad finding, and that's about where the race is right now. So, in a nutshell, what you had is the Commander-in-Chief Forum, the Times screwing up the story, Gary Johnson imploding on Morning Joe, and those are the three big stories today.
Wow. I hope Gary Johnson can find a way to relax and unwind.
Right. So, I got some other stuff.
Okay.
It was my pundit roundup today, and we went back and looked a lot about media coverage of Clinton and Trump, and that's a lot of what's in here. And I got some pretty good stories here. I think that probably my favorites are Dave Hopkins, who is a poli-sci professor, I think at Boston College, has a new book out today. Just came out today, which is called Asymmetric Politics.
Oh,
Paul Waldman, writing in the Washington Post, and Brian Beutler, writing in New Republic.
Those are three good ones.
Those are three very good stories, and the Hopkins one I will start with. They're all in the pundit roundup. You can find them all right there.
Okay.
That's a subtweet to Scott Anderson. But I'll give them to you so it's easier for you to read. And so let's start with the David Hopkins piece, the neutral political science professor with no axe to grind. 2 reasons why the press cares more about the Clinton Foundation than the Trump Foundation.
Okay.
Over the last few weeks, the prestige press, notably led by the New York Times, and we had a lot to say about the Times this morning, has taken a renewed interest in the activities of the Clinton Foundation, running a series of stories suggesting the foundation donors might have received some sort of preferential treatment from Clinton or her staff while she was running the State Department, but the lack of any hard evidence or quid pro quo has not stopped Republican critics and good government scolds from attacking Clinton over the foundation's existence. The former group doesn't need any proof to find her guilty. The latter takes the position that the appearance of impropriety is itself a transgression, which more or less means that anybody in the news media thinks you might have done something wrong, then by definition you did.
That is a tough standard.
It is. But they apply it to Democrats more than Republicans. In the midst of a charged presidential campaign against a hated opponent, we might expect Democrats and liberals to mount an aggressive pushback. Indeed, they have. Some Clinton defenders have focused on rebutting the news media's suggestions that the former Secretary of State violated ethical norms. Others have charged the Times and like-minded press sources with imposing a double standard on the candidates. Now remember, this whole theme of double standards we saw at the Commander-in-Chief Forum last night, which we talked about in the early part of this segment. After all, by the way, the new hashtag for that is lowering the bar.
Yes.
After all, Donald Trump's own foundation not only broke the law by making a campaign contribution to an elected official using the funds of a non-political organization, but did so just before the official, in this case Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, if you don't know the story, decided not to launch an investigation into accusations of fraud by Trump's defunct university. Universities in bunny quotes, in air quotes there. Yet the demonstrated illegal behavior of Trump's organization, to say nothing of the possibility that the money bought a reprieve from punishment for further criminal activity, has received much less press attention than the mere questions and shadows that supposedly swirl around the Clinton operation. That last line is as if Kristen Welker is giving the report on MSNBC, because that's the way she does it. Why the difference he says, I see two reasons. The first has to do with the press's particular preoccupation with apparent examples of hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
Democrats in general are held to a higher standard in the media with respect to scandals or alleged scandals involving improper influence or corruption because Democrats, more than Republicans, support the imposition of stricter rules and laws intended to reduce improper influence or corruption. Journalists are especially upset when the party that vows more frequently to clean up government is caught in an ethical lapse, as it's seen not only as dishonorable but also hypocritical. So if you're a good government type who wants governance, then for you to be caught in a scandal is way worse, let's say, than that Louisiana senator with his diaper problem there, David Vitter.
Yeah, but
is it fair? No, but this is what he's saying. This is the mindset of the media.
Well, I get that, but I mean, why isn't it worse when people are caught in diapers when they're the Family Values Party?
It is, and it should, but the Republicans. So that's where the hashtag, it's okay if you're a Republican came from so many years ago. We can see this dynamic in a story the Times published over the weekend on Clinton's recent campaign finance activities. The article portrays Clinton as spending more time on the fundraising circuit than the campaign trail in recent weeks, and openly argues that this shows she prefers the company of the super rich to that of the regular people she claims to champion in her, air quotes, seemingly joyless, end quote, public campaign. That's how they describe it. She's having a good time in the Hamptons with these rich people, and she hates being on the campaign trail talking to reporters. Like this. Amy Chozick, who wrote this story. Can you imagine why? I don't know why. The clear message is that Clinton is something of a phony when she says her policies would benefit everyday Americans, or when she advocates reform of the campaign finance system. Now, Republicans also spend a lot of time hanging around rich people, but they tend to openly advocate policies that cut taxes on the wealthy and reduce business regulations. According to the press, then, Republicans may be out of touch, but they're not dishonest or hypocritical when they engage in this behavior. So the whole mindset is Democrats are hypocrites and Republicans are merely playing the game the way everybody knows the game is played.
Oh, well,
right?
That's
got that,
Trump's
and that's
claim.
how you have to report it.
All right, but
okay. Second reason,
scandal something. All right,
yeah, scandal something. Right. The second reason why the media spends more time implying that the Clinton Foundation is an ethical problem than cataloging the actual transgressions of the Trump Foundation has to do with the specific pre-existing flaws from which the candidates are perceived to suffer. In the main, journalists do not view Hillary Clinton as incompetent, unintelligent, inexperienced, temperamental, or ideologically extreme. They don't.
Okay, but that's good. All right, not to them.
Right. Her chief fault, in their eyes, and those of the public, is dishonesty. A perception that stretches back to the Bill Clinton years in the 90s, but has been reinforced more recently by the Benghazi email server issues. Any evidence or even subject matter that can be interpreted as consistent with the narrative, again, air quotes, scare quotes about narrative, of ubiquitous Clinton shadiness, will therefore receive considerable attention as it vindicates an existing media conclusion. Secondarily, she's deemed to be an untalented and strategically unsophisticated campaigner, another common theme of critical media coverage. Yeah. So, to be sure, the media doesn't seem to think Donald Trump is particularly honest, but that's far from the primary knock on Trump. And this is an interesting observation coming up here.
All right.
His biggest alleged flaw, according to the press, is racial divisiveness, followed by running a supposedly incompetent campaign, lacking apparent command of policy, and exhibiting unpresidential personality traits. All of that's true, by the way.
Yes.
He has all of those things. But Hopkins writes, indicators that Trump's rhetoric is less truthful than Clinton's are occasionally noted, but don't shape media stories to the same degree simply because honesty is simply not Trump's number one problem, the way it is for Clinton. He's got these four other problems first.
Huh.
All of which are disqualifying, I would add.
Yeah.
But that's the reason that the media seems bored by the idea of showing that Trump is dishonest, because, like, everybody knows that.
I guess. I mean, yeah, it does make sense, and it does occur to me from time to time where people just say, well, that's just the baseline assumption about him. But why you can't put it in print, I don't know.
Because the baseline assumption, the editors take it out. That's not what the readers want to read.
I guess that's true. The baseline assumption about Clinton is the headline every time. I don't know why we can't work in a mention. By the way, he's habitually dishonest. I mean, to a humorous extent.
Yep. to the point where it's like undeniable. So he concludes, I doubt the 2016 election will turn on media stories about the Clinton Foundation, and both candidates have ample opportunity to make their own case, but journalists have hardly been shy about expressing the opinion that the election this year has left the American people with a particularly poor choice of candidates. And the tone of coverage of both Clinton and Trump is likely to be overwhelmingly negative from now until November. It's already clear that the next president, whoever it may be, will come into office viewing the press as a sworn enemy. That's his conclusion. And I say it's the press's fault.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, regardless, that is going to be a difficult position.
It is.
For anybody. And they would be right.
Right. Some from the left, Paul Waldman, not going to read the whole thing, but he has a piece. Trump's history of corruption is mind-boggling, so why is Clinton supposedly the corrupt one?
Because?
We don't know the answers to the questions about Trump because nobody seems to be pursuing them.
Aleppo.
But he has a nice piece here. Here's a partial list. Trump's casino bankruptcies, his habit of refusing to pay contractors, Trump University, Trump Institute, another get-rich-quick scheme, Trump Network, a multi-level marketing venture or pyramid scheme, Trump model management, Trump's employment of foreign guest workers at his resorts, Trump use of hundreds of undocumented workers from Poland, Trump's history of being charged with housing discrimination, Trump's connections to mafia figures involved in New York construction, the time Trump paid the Federal Trade Commission $750,000. You have a 2-hour show, right? I think.
Yeah, please.
The time Trump paid the Federal Trade Commission $750,000 over charges he violated antitrust laws when trying to take over a rival casino, the fact that Trump is now being advised by Ailes, who was forced out as Fox News chief with the sexual harassment, and the last one is happening right now. To repeat, the point is not that these stories have never been covered. They have. The point is they get covered briefly. Everybody in the media moves on. If any of these kinds of stories involve Clinton, news organizations would rush to assign multiple reporters to them. The reporters would start asking questions. We'd learn more about all of them. And that's important because we may have reached a point where the frames around the candidate are locked in. Trump's the crazy bigoted one. Clinton's the corrupt one. Once we decide those are the appropriate lenses through which the two candidates are to be viewed, it shapes the decisions the media makes every day about which stories are important to pursue. And again, I say to you, that's the media's fault. They really screwed this up. Final piece here is from Brian Beutler. The media coverage of Hillary Clinton's out of whack. The problem isn't the scrutiny of her emails or the Clinton Foundation. And let's make that clear. These are good questions to ask. Nobody has a problem with asking the questions. But when you get the answer, and the answer is there's nothing there, then it can't be, well, there's still questions. Unanswered questions, and this raises a cloud.
They still linger. I mean,
right, exactly. The problem isn't the scrutiny of her emails or the Clinton Foundation, but treating such sins as comparable to Trump's, and I just read you what Trump's were.
Yes. And,
right?
And they're not comparable?
And then what happens is when you start asking the reporters, they get very defensive about it.
Yes.
Well, you're saying we shouldn't ask. No. We're saying that you should ask about this in equal value. You should go ahead and see what's going on with Trump. Well, now you're just trying to deflect. No. You've spent weeks and an army of reporters on the Clinton Foundation that turns out that what you discovered is that it's actually a life-saving foundation, which really is unique in a lot of ways except for the Carter Center. Why don't you look at the Trump Foundation and see what they do? Well, you're deflecting. No. Why don't you assign a group of people to each and then come up with your conclusions and publish them side by side? No, we're not interested.
Yeah, it's tough. And reporters, I don't even know if reporters are in a position to
It's the editors here. It's not the reporters. They
Yes.
don't decide what stories they cover.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's it. The editors aren't on Twitter, damn it. Or
They read
something.
Twitter, though, and you can tell that from having that New York Times story redone.
Yes, that I see is someone's been watching that all morning, and as people complain increasingly, they're making even more changes, which I don't even know how you... Can you dig out of that hole? That might be just, here's a public editor saying it sucked and we're starting over now.
This particular story, they're toast.
All right.
I mean, they just dug a hole and they can't get out of it now.
Okay, then.
Anyway, so that's my summary for today. Best I could do, given the ton of information that we had in the last 12 hours.
Yes. Metric something ton. My kids have a slang term.
So what do you think of all of this?
I don't know what to make of.
I know you got a show. Why don't you talk about it for an hour and 15 minutes?
I don't know. We'll figure it out. It's unbelievable just watching the snippets of last night, I don't even. Matt Lauer wasn't obviously going to be the guy, even if he asked good questions. He's just not the guy to draw the conclusion that needed to be drawn. The thing that did it for me was the idea that he had no idea that there was a military justice system.
Right.
Like,
I mean,
he didn't even
have all this
see
stuff.
a few good
From
men.
a media watching perspective, though, listen to this. This is a very, very brief discussion between Byron York and Matthew Dowd this morning.
All right. This is a tough sell, but okay.
Hey, remember the time that Jonah Goldberg and
That's true.
and Sean were going after it? That wasn't bad. This isn't bad either. It's just really short, 3 or 4 things.
Okay.
Criticism of Lauer, says Byron York, will morph into Dems trying to push debate moderators to fact check.
Yes.
Chris Wallace is right. That's not the moderator's job.
Bill earlier said, yes, that's exactly how they'll use it, and he's actually wrong. But okay.
Yeah, I said that too.
But okay.
So Matthew Dowd says, Byron, of course it's a moderator's job to fact check. Moderators are supposed to be journalists.
Why do we choose journalists?
Right? Why do we choose Matt Lauer?
Yeah.
Byron York. Fact check often goes by another name, a question. Mr. Trump, in 2002 you said X, today you said Y. Which is it? There'll be lots of that. And I wrote back and said, why would you think that's inappropriate? The fact of the matter is, people are allowed to change their position, but if you're going to lie and said I never said 2002, and in fact the evidence says that you did, then you need to be fact-checked on that. Mr. Trump, you did say you were for the war in Iraq and you were for intervention in Syria. This is on the record. Why do you keep lying about it?
Yeah. Now, was Byron saying that he thought? I don't know why I'm asking you. Because I won't talk to Byron. Was Byron?
I talk to Byron,
saying,
but Byron doesn't talk back.
Okay.
A lot of the conservatives do talk back to me. He's not one of them.
All right.
He's a partisan.
I was wondering if he was saying. I guess we'll now speculate. Well, I thought he might be saying, "Oh, well, there'll definitely be questions like this, and that is something that you should consider fact checking. It's just that." The moderator shouldn't necessarily. His position may be that the moderator shouldn't stop people and say, "Wait a minute, that's not true."
When it comes to conservatives, I don't explain their positions. I don't let them wiggle out of what they said. I don't do it for Trump. I won't do it for Byron York.
All right. I thought that
what Trump
really
really meant to say, if he were coherent, would have been this other thing that sounds a whole lot more intelligent than he himself was. Now, why don't we just go with what he said?
Okay. I mean, yeah.
I'm just saying.
I guess to me, I would say, all right. So
I'm not explaining it.
Given
you
that
claimed it's not, and Chris Wallace said it's not the moderator's job to fact check, and you, Byron York, said that is correct.
Yeah. Where then I guess when pressed, he finally said, "Well, there will be something that you ought to be considering fact checking," and I would say I do consider that fact checking. So why don't you go back and say it is the moderator's job? And I guess ultimately, I suppose he would just defend that by saying, well, the moderator can choose not to ask that follow-up question, and that's okay, which it isn't. But all right, so then we're all back where we started, I think.
And with that, I think I'll wrap up.
All right.
Just a couple of reminders. Matt Lauer did have an interview a few years back where he interviewed a female CEO of a major corporation and wanted to know if she could do the job of being a mom and run a corporation at the same time.
Oh.
A question, of course, that is never asked of men.
Yeah,
and Gary Johnson, by the way, also didn't know who Harriet Tubman was.
Really?
Yeah.
Is she from Aleppo?
A few minutes later, an aide directed him to a room in the convention center that was named for Harriet Tubman. Who's Harriet Tubman? Johnson asked. After the aide reminded him who Tubman was, Johnson said, "Oh, yeah, something about a $20 bill."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
That's from a New Yorker magazine article. I will send you the reference. Yes, it happened. It's true. I'm a blogger. I do links.
Wow, man.
There you go.
That's crazy. Well, okay, I'll take a look at that link. Gary, we all get the weed point.
Gary,
That's
you're not going to be president. You promised to stop smoking during this campaign. I don't know that you've gotten that far.
Don't smoke at all before you legalize it, you dork.
Really?
All right, well.
Unless you're in Colorado.
No, you can do it where, once legal, it's fine.
Once legal, right?
But don't hog it all up. It's not fair to be like, oh, I'm going to legalize it, but I'm going to smoke every bit of it first.
Right. Thanks so much for allowing me on the show to rant on talking with David Waldman on Kagro in the morning. This is Greg Borkin. I will not be here tomorrow, but I will be back next week, and we'll see where David takes us over the next hour, 10 minutes or so. Always interesting. I get to listen to it by podcast later, like many of you do, but if you're listening live by podcast, however you do it, thank you so much. And you know what? Clinton's ahead. She's going to win. This is going to be a lot of interesting stuff to dissect between now and then. But there's going to be twists and turns before we get there, so we'll put up with it.
Yeah, okay, well, we've got a lot to think about, including, my gosh, Aleppo. All right. Thank you, Greg.
Alrighty, take care.
Disappointing. Okay. All right.
By the way, if the dentist says to get your teeth fixed,
get
them fixed.
Well, we're doing the fixing. The question is the pulling.
Well, if that's part of the deal, then look, you're not going to do it.
No, right, well.
So let them do it their way.
I think we're gonna. It's one of those things, it's one of those dumb things that you see on the internet and somebody says, I can fix it with that. Except, even if you can, well, you're in Denver and I can't. All right.
Right. Who is, let me just give you another alternative point of view. I think somebody tweeted about if Jill Stein had been asked about Aleppo, she would have said, isn't that one of those Monsanto things that was invented to keep me out of the debates?
That's entirely possible. I believe she knows what Aleppo is. I would guess. But I don't know for sure.
Anyway,
I don't know.
Take care, and I'll talk to you Monday.
Okay, thanks very much. We'll catch up with you on Monday. Aleppo, just think about it.
Yeah, think about that.
Okay.
I'll go Google what exactly an Aleppo is.
If there is such a thing. I would like to know. Or we can make up a...
or it's 2 Leppos or 3 Leppi. I don't know.
Yeah, all right.
We'll find out. Take care.
Okay. We'll take that. Okay, thanks, Greg. And I see Chris Hayes reminding everybody with those little clapping hands for accenting. Clapping hands emoji. The ISIS capital is Raqqa, not Aleppo. But I don't know. Did somebody say, oh, yeah, I know what Aleppo is. It's the capital of ISIS, which, do they really even have a capital? I don't know. No, but I saw Barnacle, I think, has it right? He just says it's the epicenter of the refugee crisis. I don't know if I would have pinpointed it necessarily that way, but here's what Aleppo has been under siege for the longest time. And, I guess the epicenter of the refugee crisis means the most people having fled from it as opposed to the epicenter, the gravitational epicenter where everybody has gone to. That's kind of what I think of when you say epicenter. But okay, I think it's the opposite. The anti-gravitational epicenter, is that even a term that nobody uses that. Okay. All right, so Gary Johnson, I'm glad he didn't say Aleppo was his favorite brand of dog food. At least we have that going for him. He may be high. Didn't know how. Now, okay, Aleppo, it's disqualifying. Harriet Tubman is like, that's disqualifying for, should I let you vote? Are you an American? Could you pass the citizenship test without knowing who Harriet Tubman is? And I realize that there are many, many citizens, by virtue of their birth, who have no idea who Harriet Tubman is. But they're not quality people who should be running for president. And I guess Gary Johnson is one of them. That's disappointing. And I guess also disappointing is not getting the opportunity. Why? I guess that we're not going to see Trump nailed on this, because the one thing he is pretty good at is BSing his way out of, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. So that's true. And I think Anna Marie Cox had a great point there. He would just have said, we're going to fix it. Believe me, it's a mess, blah, 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 without ever saying, I don't know what it is. And I guess at some level, you want to say, okay, well, I prefer that somebody say, remind me. I'm honest with you. Either it slipped my mind, I never knew in the first place, whatever. And I guess I'd rather have a guy who says, Aleppo is, are you kidding? Yeah, I'm embarrassed, but no, I'm not kidding. Give me, it's the epicenter of the refugee crisis. Ah, great, refugee crisis. That, I'm on the same page, let's talk. But then I guess he didn't do that either. So I guess it's not going to work out. Okay. Well, let's see. What other fun things have I put aside here for our discussion? Many. many things. Many. Believe me. I have so many. It's terrific. It's fantastic. All right. Well, let's see. Where to go with this? I can't even tell you. Let's see. Here's something I put aside from the other day. Just we'll do a little more Trump bashing. Not even from last night. Daniel Dale, Washington correspondent for the Toronto Star, as it happens. Thanks for putting that in the Twitter bio so I could figure that out. Somebody retweeted this one. I am not a follower of Daniel Dale's, though I have no objection, Daniel, if you'll have me as a follower. He I guess, was excerpting from Trump's remarks, I guess, an appearance in Virginia. I'm losing track of his appearances in Virginia. Let's see. First of all, the Iran-Iraq war. This isn't the one that I picked up on, but this is linked to the one I picked up. The one I picked up on was about ISIS and propaganda on the internet. And what was notable about it, he just says, worth a read. Donald Trump somehow segues from cyber to ISIS propaganda to his poll numbers. In other words, it's all about me. Why don't we just start with that one, because that was the more interesting of the two. Maybe we'll fill in background with the other piece here. Just a short excerpt that he grabbed from, I don't know, his notes or a transcript or something and tweeted out as a photo, because it's longer than you can fit in a tweet. You know, says Donald Trump, cyber is becoming so big today. I imagine him saying that. So the word cyber should be 10 years dead by now, but I guess for people like Trump, cyber, it's becoming so big today. Cyber is actually dying out as a term, but I see what you mean. The digital strategies and digital media and social media and monitoring of digital media and all these things. I'm interrupted here just for a moment. Again, see, I'm putting something aside. As Bill tweets to me, you've put aside so many things, so many great things, that I've actually gotten bored with all the putting aside, I can tell you. This show is a disaster. It really is. And I should, in a just world, I'd have all my problems taken care of, so I could just record tons and tons of backstories so that if I ever took a vacation again, I could just play you so much recorded stuff. Your head would spin. It would. It would spin because you'd chop it off and it would spin on the ground. No more backstories, please. All right. So here's Donald Trump saying, cyber is becoming so big today. Donald and I have so much in common. It's really scary. He can't finish his story, and neither can I. Cyber is becoming so big today. It's becoming something that a short number of years ago, wasn't even a word. Like, that's huge insight. It was a word a short number of years ago, and it was already obsolete. But whatever. It wasn't even a word. Now the cyber, like the internet, the cyber is so big. It's bigly big. You look at what they're doing with the internet, how they're talking, recruiting people through the internet. Now he's on to ISIS, you see. And part of it is the psychology, because so many people think they're winning, like you. And, there's this whole big thing. What the effing F are you talking about? There's this whole big thing. That's it. That's my specifics. There's a whole big thing. The cyber. Even today's psychology. You know what? I'm sorry. I keep interrupting. You can't tell which part of it is me embellishing and what part is him just being a babbling dummy. Because I'm also babbling like a dummy. I'm going to just read it. Cyber is becoming so big today. It's becoming something that a short number of years ago, wasn't even a word. Now the cyber is so big. You look at what they're doing with the internet, how they're recruiting people through the internet. And part of it is the psychology, because so many people think they're winning. And there's a whole big thing. Even today's psychology, where CNN came out with a big poll. Their big poll came out today that Trump is winning. It's good psychology. It's good psychology. Direct quote, start to finish, for the one time I've ever been able to read something start to finish without commenting. Each time I wanted to stop and say, this is so Palin-esque. It's crazy. That's his quote. I don't know what he was responding to. I don't know if he was asked the question, but that's how he does it. The cyber, it's so big these days in the cyber. They're using the internet's ISIS, but he forgets to say ISIS or, by the way, radical Islam. He doesn't say any of it. I don't know. But then he manages to get around to, well, I'm winning polls. I'm winning in the polls. That's the big news about ISIS. There was another excerpt that he passed along, Daniel Dale, this one, about the Iran-Iraq war. Don't really know why, but this was it. This is the excerpt. We made them a power, and we also happen to have given them Iraq. I always say Iraq and Iran were very similar militarily. They'd fight, and then they'd rest. They'd fight, and then Saddam Hussein would do the gas, and somebody would do something else, and they'd rest. Do the gas. No idea what that's supposed to mean. I guess I do, really, but okay. But remember that, how long ago was it that he was saying, big deal, Saddam Hussein, he used some gas, and everybody loses their mind. Like, that's not a big deal. No, it's not a war crime or anything like that. That's his description of the Iran-Iraq war. They're similar. They'd fight, and then they'd rest. And they'd fight, and then he'd do the gas, and somebody would do something else, some other thing, some military. I'd be so good at the military, your head would spin. He does the gas, they fight, and then they rest. He does another thing. I know so much about the military. I'll be so good at the military and the Uniform Code of Military Justice, your head will spin. My head did spin. The guy had never heard of courts martial and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Couldn't even recall seeing it in a movie. I don't know if you caught that. I don't have the citation handy, but that's exactly what he did. He was asked about the rapes and sexual assaults in the military, and he said that his solution was probably maybe they could just set up some kind of special courts for the military. Like, duh. I need. I'm on Trump's side on one thing, the political correctness thing. I need a PC pass for resurrecting my one totally un-PC word that I need. I gotta find a substitute. It's totally unfair to rely on that word I grew up with, and so I'm not even going to mention it at this point. But we need better terminology for how outrageously stupid Donald Trump actually is. And it's weird. I mean, he's high functioning. There's no doubt about it. And still, as compared to the entire universe of the American population, I would say he's smarter than, actual average. It's just one of those things. But I don't know what to say. The guy he's very base and just doesn't know a goddamn thing about anything. I don't know. There's not that much longer I could really go on about that, but I wanted to share that one. By the way, another thing I will share, I don't know how much do we want to read into this one, but I was reminded last night that I guess with Trump spewing the way he was about how, the military, what he was going to do and how he's going to sack all the generals and replace them all because he knows so much more than the generals, but also he's going to give them 30 days and he knows nothing. So I was frightened. Sociopath, do you think that's the word, Justice, that I'm looking for? That's a word that I'm looking for, but I have to find a acceptable shorthand for how childishly stupid he can be about things. And that's painful. That hurts when you say it. But it hurts him, not other people. All right, anyway, so I had this piece brought to my attention last night. I guess it's good context for I'm going to fire all the generals, and I know what I'm doing, and we're going to bomb the hell out of them, and I gave you 30 days to come up with a plan, but really the plan has to be bomb them and maybe even nuke them. To launch a nuclear strike, Clinton or Trump would follow these steps. Dave Merrill, Nafisa Saeed, and Brittany Harris at Bloomberg Politics actually went through the mechanics, the procedural mechanics of the president ordering a nuclear strike. Ordinarily, you know there is such a thing, and you rely on the executive branch and their liaison with the military to work that stuff out. You don't really want to know. You just make the assumption that it won't be done on a whim. And now we have to have that explained to us. We have to see this procedure spelled out for us because there's a candidate that we fear might be provoked into launching a nuclear attack based on a tweet. I got in a Twitter war with somebody, and I'm going to nuke them. Okay, and by the way, thank you, Parlio, for sending me a link to 127 ways of saying he is dumb from a lawyer. Lawyer won't get me in trouble, will he? Okay. Back to the would you like to know? Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have repeatedly accused each other of lacking the fitness, temperament, and qualifications to be commander-in-chief. She's right, he's wrong. Clinton has said Trump isn't someone we can trust with nuclear weapons. Trump has called Clinton close to unhinged. How much power does the president alone have to launch a nuclear strike? Bloomberg News asked Bruce G. Blair, a former Minuteman missile launch officer and research scholar at Princeton University's program on science and global security, to spell out the step-by-step procedure. Remember that tweet storm we read not all that long ago about the guy? It was a Bush national security guy, as I recall, but he also made plain that his background included time in the silos with those missiles, and he made the very excellent point that there is already enormous psychological pressure on the people working in those silos, given that they know that their job might entail turning the keys and launching nuclear strikes that would kill millions. But let's add now, this Trump suggests, why not add to the psychological pressure? Because he doesn't think any further than I would be the president and I would want nuking done. So that's that. But thinking about the psychological pressure, that's for us to do. Those of us who do nuance have to think about what does it do to the psychology of the people who have to do this, and what does it do to readiness, the actual ability to deliver a nuclear threat if, through some miracle, Donald Trump were really to think about nuclear decision-making in what I hesitate to call the nuclear decision-making rational because, well, blowing up the world isn't very rational, and I'm not certain that it can be done. But I guess what would pass for traditionally rational, and of course, that's just because you're an establishment type. Okay, all right. But you get the idea. The question is, what does it do to readiness if people who sit in the silos with the keys and the launch buttons have to ask themselves, if the day should ever come, am I being asked to launch for the kind of reason that I was trained, for whatever reason, to believe was legit, or am I launching because he got in a Twitter war and a normal person would say, no, this doesn't rise to the level where I involve anyone else other than me. This is just a private problem, and I'm going to have to deal with it. Or at the very worst, it's a public problem, and I'll involve the State Department. But I don't kill anybody over it, certainly, and I certainly don't do it wholesale by the millions and possibly end life on Earth as we know it because, angry about a tweet. I mean, it's an enormous problem. Even if you are the kind of person who says we absolutely should be launching nuclear strikes over something here, you're going to have a problem with the fact that there's going to be people in those silos, isolated, being asked to launch a nuclear strike, who are going to have second, third, fourth, fifth thoughts, not about the wisdom of using nuclear weapons so much as am I being used as a pawn in somebody's personal vendetta here? I can't launch because of that. I just can't do it, and I don't know. I gotta find out. Very interesting. All right. Well, back to the mechanics. Okay, This, again, based on talking to Bruce Blair, a former Minuteman missile launch officer and research scholar at Princeton. Step-by-step procedure. This is the best they can do to reconstruct something that we could call a step-by-step procedure. The president considers a nuclear strike. The president of Mexico is really being a jerk. What am I going to do about this? The commander-in-chief's power is clear. He or she has the sole authority to use nuclear weapons. Okay, that's great. I'm going to call in a nuclear strike on Mexico. The top brass is brought in. Fire all the brass. Bring me my brass. I want the best. I want to surround myself with the best people. I'm going to make new generals. Before initiating military action, this piece says, the president convenes a conference with military and civilian advisors in Washington. Roger, what should I do? And around the world, Alex Jones, what should I do? To talk through options. In the White House, the call takes place in the Situation Room, which is a fabulous room, now appointed with terrific, beautiful, classy gold chairs. If traveling, on my fantastic Trump Force One, if traveling, the president is patched in on a secure line. A key participant in the meeting, the Pentagon's Deputy Director of Operations, an officer in charge of the National Military Command Center, also known as the War Room. This around-the-clock operations center is responsible for preparing and ultimately transmitting a launch order from the president. The head of all U.S. strategic nuclear forces at Strategic Command in Omaha would probably also be asked for a briefing on strike options. What should I bomb? I want to bomb Mexico City. Can I just do that? Time elapsed? Less than a minute in between. All right, I need to I got to think about nuclear strikes. Let's talk. The consultation, though, lasts as long as the president wishes. But if enemy missiles are heading toward the U.S., which is ordinarily the only reason you would be thinking about something like this, and the president must order a counterstrike, the consultation may last just 30 seconds. The tight timeline raises the risk of launching hastily on a false warning. There is that problem, right? Like War Games, another movie. You should just basically see movies. And then you'll be ready to be president. He didn't even see A Few Good Men. He's not qualified. Okay, so the president decides to launch. Some advisors may try to change the president's mind or resign in protest, but ultimately, the Pentagon must comply with the commander-in-chief's order. Uh-oh. The order is verified as the next step. The senior officer in the Pentagon War Room must formally authenticate that the person ordering the strike is indeed the president. So I guess we have that opportunity. This isn't Donald Trump. It's not him. Don't do it. It is Donald Trump. He's the only one who would. That would be interesting psychology right there. Say the senior officer in the Pentagon War Room refuses and says the only way I can stop this insanity, and it is insanity, is to simply say this isn't the I do not authenticate that this is the president. Now you have people on the other side of this chain of command saying, aha, but it must actually be Donald Trump because no other idiot would put us in this position where he's ordering a strike and the senior Pentagon officer is refusing to authenticate that it's the president. So it probably is the president, so he's authenticated. Maybe that doesn't even work. The senior officer has to authenticate that this is, in fact, the president. The officer reads a challenge code, often 2 phonetic letters from the military alphabet, such as Delta Echo. You know, you've heard all that. Niner Bravo, Alpha Bravo, Charlie, Delta Echo. I don't know what F is. What's F? Fandango? I got no idea. We never get that far in the movies. All right. The president retrieves the biscuit. How do you like that? A laminated card that the president or military aide carries at all times and finds the matching response to the challenge code. Charlie Zulu, for instance. I guess that's all worked out in advance. Okay. Whew. Let's see. I'm just going to check up on this piece here coming through. All right, so the biscuit. That one I haven't heard about. I heard you usually hear about the football, not the biscuit. Okay. The War Room prepares a launch order. That would come next. A message that contains the chosen war plan, time to launch, authentication codes, and codes needed to unlock the missiles before firing them. The encoded encrypted message is only about 150 characters long. They got to get that down to 140 so that it can be tweeted in case of national emergency. It's about the length of a tweet, they note. That's good. It is broadcast to each worldwide command and directly to launch crews. Okay, there it is. Look at that. And it's all sort of put together. No spaces. They got no spaces to spare. This is a sample, I guess, order. Lima 3 Rome of our Romeo. Oh, okay, Rome of our Lima 3 Romeo 4 Quebec. Do they say Quebec? Do you think they probably say Quebec, right? Sierra Uniform Bravo Lima Romeo Oscar. So those are, I guess, our answers for which what they use for letters. So Lima 3, L3, Romeo 4, L3, R4, QSUBL. Okay. So Quebec, Sierra, Uniform, Bravo. Without spaces, it makes it really difficult. Lima, Romeo, Oscar, Echo, November, Zulu, Golf, Sierra, Bravo, 4, Juliet 2, Hotel. I hope I'm not giving away any launch codes. Juliet 2, Hotel, Oscar, November, Lima, Mike, X-Ray, Kilo, Oscar. And to be honest, if Donald Trump got on stage and said that, that would probably make it sound like he was more coherent on national security issues than any of the things he actually did say. Okay. That the order then goes out, right? Time elapsed. It takes 2 or 3 minutes to read that without the spaces, I guess. The submarine and ICBM crews received the message within seconds of the broadcast. Just a few minutes have passed since the initial conference call. Launch crews now take over. Launch message in hand. The crews open locked safes to obtain sealed authentication system, SAS, codes prepared by the National Security Agency and distributed throughout the military's nuclear chain of command. I hate to have to proofread those. They compare the SAS code in the launch order with those in their safes. If the missiles are launched from a submarine, the captain, executive order, and 2 others authenticate the order. The launch message provides the combination to an onboard safe holding the fire control key needed to deploy the missiles. Missiles are ready for launch about 15 minutes after receiving the order. So it's a little warm-up time. Let's see if we can get that down to like 8 or 9 minutes. Can we work on that? If the missiles are launched from land, what happens? 5 launch crews in various underground centers control a squadron of 50 missiles. Each crew consists of 2 officers. The individual teams are spread miles apart. Each receives the orders, opens safes, and compares their SAS codes to those sent by the war room. If they match, if they don't match, I guess they say, "We're being spooked by comm chatter." I'm going to borrow from another crazy movie that probably knows more about the military than Donald Trump really does. If they match, the crews enter the message's war plan number into their launch computers to retarget missiles from their peacetime targets in the ocean. I guess is that in case of accidental launch? Is that like pointing your nuclear missiles in a safe direction? Wow, interesting. I didn't know that. So they retarget their missiles from peacetime targets in the ocean to their new targets. Poor whales. Using additional codes in the message, the crews enter a few more keystrokes to unlock the missiles before turning launch keys retrieved from the safe. At the designated launch time, the 5 crews turn their keys simultaneously, sending 5 votes to the missiles. Ooh, it's all about voting. Again. So if you don't have photo ID, you can't launch. Mutiny is unlikely, by the way. It takes just 2 votes to launch the missiles. So even if 3 2-officer IBM crews refuse to carry out the order, it won't stop the launch. I wonder if that would up things. Like would the fact that Donald Trump is at the top of the chain of command make it so that it was only 1 out of 5 votes is about 20%. That might be his floor, right? Last step, of course, missiles are launched. About 5 minutes may elapse from the president's decision until intercontinental ballistic missiles blast out of their silos, and about 15 minutes until submarine missiles shoot out of their tubes. They have more time, of course, because they're at sea, and they also need less time to reach their targets because they're at sea. Once fired, the missiles and their warheads cannot be called back. There's no turnaround button. There's no self-destruct button, Donald, just so you're aware of that. Someone ought to ask that. They ought to ask, if you did launch missiles, let's say based on improper information, and you found out very shortly afterward that information was wrong, what would you do? Oh, I'd use the self-destruct button. Okay, well, there isn't one. Well, I would definitely buy the most terrific one. Because you can do that. You make an executive decision. We're going to build one. I'm going to build a beautiful wall and a beautiful self-destruct button. It's going to work out just great. Let's see. Other information. I saw one of the tweets that went by Josh Marshall, I guess, still harping on one of the other very important points, and I'm glad he did because it reminds me that part of the exchange last night on the issue of in the discussion with Donald Trump, he was, I think, very careless about his discussion of national security issues. He didn't give any particular secrets away, but I think he lied out his ass and made a real problem. And I did tweet about this one last night, but from a different perspective. You recall this? He said at some point, Lauer asks him, basically asks him a question that you really shouldn't even open this Pandora's box up with somebody like Trump because he's liable to say something terrible, which he did. It wasn't the kind of terrible thing that I thought he might be liable to say once we started giving him classified briefings, but it was terrible for another reason. He asked him, was there anything that you've learned in your classified briefings as nominee, as the Republican nominee, that surprised you or I don't know, even enlightened you in some way, but there's no chance of his actually being enlightened. But remember, it was basically, what are you learning in your briefings, etc. And that's very dangerous because, like I said, it opens the door for Trump just either on purpose or accidentally just saying, blah, 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 I learned this thing, and it's highly classified, and maybe Lauer really thought that's exactly what will happen, and then we'll finally disqualify him once and for all. And then instead of everybody saying I did a terrible job, everyone will say you're the hero. You saved America by disqualifying Donald Trump. But Trump didn't fall for it in exactly that way. So instead of saying here's some secrets, I spill some secrets to you from the briefings, he instead says, well, I'm not going to share any specifics, but I will tell you this. The commanders are very unhappy. I learned, and he just throws this out there. And this did make it into at least one of the versions of the New York Times articles that ran, too. That he said, I learned about a particular crisis which Obama and I think he said, and Clinton, too, which is nuts because she wouldn't have had anything to do with it. But maybe it's an old one when she was still in office that they handled so badly it was a disaster. Believe me, a disaster, a total mess. And we're going to have to fix it. And the reason it was a total mess and a disaster, of course, was they didn't follow our leading general's advice. Now, there was, I guess, a little bit of further inquiry. How do you know? I mean, what do you mean? How do you know that they didn't follow their advice? Well, essentially, the way to prove that is, of course, for him to say, the generals told me outright that that's the case. But he can't say that because, one, they would never say so. And two, if they had said so, he would never be able to tell us that they said so without revealing highly sensitive information, the most classified kind of, although who knows what they tell him and what they don't, but this would sort of be an enormous breach of security if he were to say, yeah, the generals are telling me, I hate Obama, he's so dumb, he never follows my advice. You can't do that. And I don't think that they would have said anything like that. But of course, this is almost exactly what was predicted, really, when people were thinking about what's going to happen when he starts to get these briefings. Is he can just come out, can he just come out and lie about what happened in them in ways that don't reveal what is actually honest to God, true classified information. But what if you clearly can't be passed classified information in a briefing and then go to the press and say, they told me XYZ. Because they would say, all right, well, we did tell you that, but you weren't supposed to tell people that we told you that. This is a huge problem. Although, what would they do about it? I have no idea. I mean, presumably there's laws on the books and you would say, I don't know, that's espionage or something. And you can't just spill that stuff. But on the other hand, you can't really all that easily just transition from normal election or normal looking election with a Republican nominee and a Democratic nominee, and they're just chugging along waiting for November, and then one of them is arrested for treason, and you just got one left. It would be so out of the ordinary and so exceptional that I just like we were wondering what would happen if he were just found guilty blatantly of any kind of violation of the Logan Act. It would just be one of those things where you would say it's a clear violation, and I guess we're supposed to arrest somebody who does this and prosecute them, but we can't just go and arrest one of the major party nominees. It's just not going to work out that way. And I guess similarly, we can't just arrest one of the major party nominees for treason. What do we do? So I don't know. But I guess then the more relevant question is, I don't really think that, I guess if you ask me, do I honestly believe that Donald Trump would just spill the beans on a piece of classified intelligence that he got in one of the briefings? I could see him doing it by accident somehow. That I'd believe. But to do it on purpose, that I doubt. But what I do not doubt is that he would say, I know I can't do this, but I can lie and say that I think I can do this. I could lie and say I was told something that I wasn't told. So, because if I do that and somebody calls me on it and they say, you spilled the beans on something you were told in a briefing, I'll say, haha, no, the joke's on you. That actually wasn't told to me in a briefing, and so you can't prove that I gave away classified information. But in the meantime, I can instead lie, and people know that I was given I was given a classified briefing, and they're likely to believe that among those people who believe that I am a legitimate candidate for president, they're likely to believe that I'm telling them the truth, that I really did hear this in a briefing. And they'll think that because they know, they read in the newspaper that I was given a briefing, and I have no reason to lie. So you can spread some really malicious rumors, like getting out there and saying the generals are so unhappy, their advice isn't being heeded, there was a thing that happened, I can't tell you which one, it was a total disaster because they didn't follow the general's advice, and I can't tell you which one it was or even which general or what the advice was. Just suffice to say, questions are being asked about whether or not both of them are, in fact, traitors who hate the military and are purposefully undermining America. We'll just leave it at that. What he did there, again, enormously dangerous. And I doubt very much whether it would ever occur to him exactly how much damage you can do with something like that. The idea of injecting that kind of deep and thoroughgoing uncertainty in the minds of military, members of the active military, who now will call into question the validity of orders they're being given by the current commander-in-chief. I don't think anything could hurt readiness more than having somebody who has every reason, all the trappings of, not of office, but of position, such that somebody, particularly members of the military who might be inclined to believe the Republican nominee for president, they're very conservative people very often, and they tend to, Republicans tend to have an advantage among active duty military for whatever reason. They still have an advantage among people who believe that they're voting family values, even though that's clear that they're not. So it's extraordinarily dangerous to inject into the mind of active duty military that, yes, I've been given a classified briefing, and guess what? What they told me was that you should not be following the orders of the current commander-in-chief. He's anti-military, he's anti-American, and the generals say he's purposefully ignoring our advice and doing the opposite. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you know what you should do. If he orders something, do the opposite. If he doesn't order something, do the opposite. That's pretty dangerous. And I'm sure in his mind, he thinks, I'm so clever. I could really screw things up for him in terms of support from the military, but I'm not going to get caught because I didn't really give away a real secret. I made that one up. And that's not against the law. You may even be right, because it might be such a stupid move. It might be something that they didn't even contemplate in designing the law. What if somebody who has known access to top secret information purposefully fabricates information designed to be misinformation, but designed to be interpreted as accurate information because the receiving audience knows that he's got regular briefing access to good information? I don't know. Maybe they were really wise in drafting the law and they have something that would cover it. But even if they did, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Really, suppose you're, in charge of this stuff. Do you think you can pull it off? Do you think you can get away with saying, we're actually going to put the cuffs on a major party nominee and haul him away in the middle of an election? I don't know. Maybe you're not the New York Times and you're not afraid of of affecting or impacting the election in mid-season. But holy cow, that would be pretty tough to deal with. Okay. Others that I guess we could spend the rest of the balance of the show catching up on. There's a couple of things. I mentioned to you yesterday that there was the possibility that the House Republicans may end up punishing Democrats for their gun policy sit-in prior to the recess. There is, in fact, some additional information from this. I picked it up originally from Tegan Goddard's Political Wire, this linking to a New York Times piece, which I think we might be able to get open here. Oh, it's not even to a piece. It was a tweet from Emery Hederman, Huetteman, I've mispronounced that horribly, but Emery says, she's covering Congress for the New York Times, a quote from Kevin McCarthy. I think you will see appropriate measures taken in the very near future, he said, regarding punishments for the Dems sit-in in June. So we definitely had that one on the radar yesterday. But there's another thing looming out there as well. Another thing they want to do to dredge up something else that has largely been left behind and forgotten, and inflict punishment over. This one also from Political Wire, also drawing on another outside source, this time the Washington Post. We'll see if I can open that one up, but it's headlined this way by Tegan. Republicans seek to censure Obama over Iran payment. The nut of the article from the Washington Post, quoted here, congressional Republicans want to censure the Obama administration, which is possibly different from censuring Obama, but I don't know, for sending $400 million in, quote, as they say, ransom to Iran on the same day as American prisoners were released, an issue they bet will play big on the campaign trail 2 months before Election Day, the Washington Post reports. The move comes as new details are emerging about just how and when the Obama administration completed the transfer of $1.7 billion to settle claims related to the incomplete sale of military weapons before the Iranian Revolution in 1979. Complex issue, as we recall, and they'll, of course, make it just that much more complex. Isn't that fantastic? By the way, If you found yourself fascinated with the nuclear launch process, programming note, Arliss Bunny lets us know, if you're looking for more information on that, Hopping Mad has detail on their August 8th episode, not even all that long ago. And you can find it, of course, at imhoppingmad.com, also, of course, on iTunes, etc. So if you want to catch up on that one, you know what? You don't even have to wait for Scott Anderson's afternoon summary. I will retweet that one out there, too, and you can all go pick that one up and make it your own, if you will. In case you want to know, if you need to preempt the launch process to bump Trump out of it, but then later on find out that you actually do need to go through with the launch, now you'll know the process, and it'll make it easy for you. Nothing I like better than facilitating nuclear launches for rogue elements. Okay. Another fun story that will add to our potpourri today, and again, thanks to Tegan Goddard's Political Wire for bringing this one to my attention. Valuable service, by the way, and a subscription one at that. If you want to throw him yet more money, go ahead, but make sure you throw us some first. We want his money before you give it away. It's fantastic what he does. It's a real service. We're a joke. So, haha. All right, but we need money too. Besides, didn't I tell you about orthodontics is happening now? No time like the present to remind everybody of our own needs here. But Tegan Goddard really does a great job. Okay, Evan McMullin. You remember that guy? He was, we'll have to talk to Morning Joe about him. Morning Joe, of course, furious that he can no longer vote for Gary Johnson. The answer, of course, is Evan McMullin. Most famous as the bald guy who's now running to stop Donald Trump when they didn't get the other guy, David French, to do it. I don't know. I'm not sure where the guy comes from. I'm not sure why he continues to do this. It might be fun to watch if he messes up Utah, though. And I guess that was supposed to be the strategy. It can't be much more than that, because here's the news. Evan McMullin accidentally picked a running mate. How do you like that? Politico has the story here. Again, we'll just satisfy ourselves with the nugget that Tegan Goddard excerpts. In all 9 states, the whopping 9, where Evan McMullin has officially qualified on the presidential ballot, he's on 9 state ballots out of the 50, McMullin has listed a Nathan Johnson as his vice presidential nominee. I wonder who he was planning on talking to about that, and didn't. McMullin's campaign won't provide any more information about Johnson, including which of the thousands of people named Nathan Johnson the campaign is referring to, saying he is only a placeholder until McMullin names an actual running mate. Interesting. Bad news for a very excited Nathan Johnson, whoever that was supposed to be. It's not, it's possible, but I don't think it's the case that he meant Navin Johnson, and he would be very excited to know that he had been nominated as vice president. But a problem does arise. In 8 of the 9 states where he did this, top election officials say McMullin's campaign can't pull Johnson's name off the ballot, and that it's Nathan Johnson, not whoever McMullin, or they properly say whomever, McMullin eventually names as his pick for vice president, that will appear on the ballot. So, 9 states will have Evan McMullin on the ballot. 8 of those states will have Nathan Johnson as his vice president. I don't think it's going to create any problems. He's not going to win any states. But I don't know. Well, I would love to know which Nathan Johnson. That's a great story in the making there. Which Nathan Johnson did you have in mind? And how does he feel about it, knowing that you likely told him, don't worry about it, I wonder if he even consulted, or if there is one. I have no idea. I mean, maybe it was just a name he pulled out of a hat. I would have thought John Smith, John Q. Public, perhaps, might have been the selection if he was just making up a name. But I wonder if he personally knows a guy named Nathan Johnson, and said to him, would like to use your name just as a placeholder. Are you cool with that? If he didn't ask him and the guy's stuck on the ballot, I wonder what he thinks about that. Just curious. Sometimes I wonder about these sorts of things, and what it might be like to talk to such a person. Okay, let's see. I mentioned to you, here's something. Would that be a Friday topic? Yeah, let's save that one for a Friday topic instead. That will allow us to wander around in Trump land a little bit more tomorrow and ask a few questions about a very weird and, to this point, under-discussed aspect of just what the hell's going on in Trump world. But here's a piece of Trump world that we can take a look at. New York Daily News, probably a really good source for something like this, so we'll indulge them for just a moment. I've been wondering about this. Wayne Barrett has a piece there that was intriguing in the title. I always wondered about this. Peas in a Pod, the long and twisted relationship between Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani. It stands to reason, both being New York based and of course both sort of rising to prominence around the same time, and of course both crazy and both looking for something to do right now. But they seem to go back quite a ways, and Giuliani is crazier than ever working on behalf of Trump. And people have really been wondering about his, has he lost his marbles at this point? And, I don't know, but I wondered about their connection. And the New York Daily News is probably going to spell it out in a really fun way. Remember also, Giuliani was the other special guest at the Pam Bondi fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago, according to the engraved invitation. So you begin to wonder, why? Why him? Wayne Barrett puts it this way. Let's start with the fact that Donald Trump's top surrogate, Rudy Giuliani, is on the payroll. In January, he joined a law firm, Greenberg Traurig, that represents Trump and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And Kushner kind of weaves his way in and out of a lot of weird pictures, too. Last year, the firm handled Trump's suit against the Florida city of Doral, so his golf course could override noise regulations that barred him from bulldozing before sunrise. He needed that changed. Not that he paid the guys with the bulldozers or anything. More recently, it handled Kushner's $340 million acquisition of the Watchtower properties in downtown Brooklyn. That probably means more in the Brooklyn environs than it does to you and me. When Trump paid a $250,000, $250,000 fine in 2000 for secretly funding a $1 million lobbying campaign against an Indian casino in upstate New York. Just wondering if you... He was represented by Greenberg. Okay, so that's where Giuliani is working. Giuliani brought Mark Mukasey, the stepson of ex-U.S. Attorney General and lifelong Giuliani friend Michael Mukasey, with him to Greenberg. Mukasey is now representing legendary legman Roger Ailes. Wow, look at that. Mukasey launched into a tirade recently against New York Magazine reporter Gabriel Sherman, whose reporting we found so fantastic, calling the Ailes biographer, quote, a virus, willing to, quote, use any woman, unquote, to wienerize the Trump debate advisor. That would be Roger Ailes. It would be a major ratcheting down of his problems if Ailes were to be wienerized, by the way. Great word, though. His dad, Mukasey's, who once branded Trump a peril to national security, delivered a Republican convention speech the night after Rudy's screed. This intertwine may or may not have something to do with why the Greenberg firm lets Rudy, one of its newest partners, who should be out there working and hustling and earning his keep, right? Hired early this year, ostensibly to run a cyber security unit. It's so big. It's getting so big, this cyber. That's why they're letting him, instead of working and earning and billing, why they let him travel the country with Trump, introducing him at rallies and fundraisers, challenging Hillary Clinton's health based on stuff he finds in corners of the internet, declaring her Clinton Foundation troubles worse than Watergate, wearing a Make Mexico Great Again also cap, and helping draft policy speeches diagnosing African Americans for white audiences. I even watched Rudy on TV before one joint trip to Ohio, loading suitcases into the back of a Trump SUV in front of Trump Tower, the only baggage that slows him down. How do you like that, huh? He's actually the bag boy on this one. Rudy has actually been more visible in his buddy's campaign than he was at times in his own $50 million presidential attempt in 2008 when he managed to convert the months-long top ranking in the polls into a single delegate. That's results for you. The Imperial 2016 candidate who hates losers, especially one who wind up in Vietnamese prisons, has instead embraced an epic dud, his solitary act of empathy in a campaign of callousness. He could have trashed Rudy like he did John McCain. I like people who weren't caught with their command center down, for instance. But the one-time comb-over twins have just too much in common. There you go. The bombs away Hawks, though bombs away Hawks today, they got multiple draft deferments during the Vietnam War, with athlete Donald citing bad feet as his excuse, and Rudy using an ear defect to sidestep his ROTC obligations. Trump is now warning of a rigged election, invoking the image of Philadelphia blacks cheating at the ballot box and calling for voter suppression squads to, quote, monitor suspect precincts. That is going to be a show. Rudy said the 1989 mayoral campaign he lost was stolen and spent millions on suppression squads dispatching off-duty white cops and firefighters to minority districts when he won in 1993. So remember, by the way, who ran media strategy for that failed 1989 bid? Roger Ailes. The two amigos also sparked similar antipathy in Mexico, their latest joint destination, Donald for a mantra of insults and Rudy for a multi-million-dollar anti-crime contract his consulting company won in Mexico City that flopped so badly the police chief declared he was no fan of Giuliani's. That doesn't even really sound all that bad, does it? Rudy even tried to lend credence to the Trumpian fantasy that thousands of Muslims in Jersey City celebrated 9/11, quibbling only with the number. Then there's the wife trifecta. No one in public life, American public life, other than perhaps their kindred spirit Newt Gingrich, has ever mastered the art of a bad divorce like Rudy and Donald, carrying on as if spousal humiliation was the point. Ask the kids. When Trump married Mistress Marla Maples nearly 4 years after he walked out on Ivana, the three convention stars, Don Jr., Ivanka, and Eric, didn't show up. Andrew and Caroline Giuliani made strained appearances at Rudy's 2003 wedding to Judy Nathan, but in 2007 both distanced themselves from their father's presidential pursuit, with Caroline Facebooking her preference for Obama as close to the ex-mayor's heart as she could plunge the dagger. Rudy's wife Donna found out he wanted a divorce when he announced it on TV, just as Marla had a couple of years before. Rudy then chose Mother's Day to alert the press that he would be having dinner with his new love and led the cameras on a 10-block walk with her after dinner, kissing her goodbye while his wife and kids simmered. His divorce lawyer declared, "We're going to have to pry her off the chandeliers to get her out of Gracie Mansion." Even Donald Trump was offended, writing an open letter to New York Magazine and urging Donna and Rudy to sit down with each other in a room without your lawyer and see if you can settle this. He's such a jackass, he has to meddle in even that. But Rudy was only following in the divorce as spectacle footsteps of Donald, who'd used the New York Post, of all places, they write in the New York Daily News, as his personal hammer a decade before, relishing in Marla's "best sex I ever had" headlines, even as they horrified young Ivanka and Don. Trump told Newsweek the scandal was great for business and pushed Marla to seize on the opportunities it presented, including $500,000 to pose in no excuses jeans. Because classy. He'd brought his mistress to the same Atlantic City boxing matches he brought his wife to, aboard the same helicopter, just as he'd set up Marla in a sparkling suite on the Aspen slopes while he was vacationing with his family. Young Don told his father then, "You just love your money," a line he did not revive in his convention script. Ivanka, shocked by headlines on newsstands during her walk to school, just wept. Attaway, Donald. Good job. Rudy and Donald first got together in the late 1980s, shortly before Donald became a co-chair of Giuliani's first fundraiser for his 1989 mayoral campaign, sitting on the Waldorf dais and steering $41,000 to the campaign. A year earlier, Tony Lombardi, the federal agent closest to then U.S. Attorney Giuliani, opened a probe of Trump's role in the suspect sale of 2 Trump Tower apartments to Robert Hopkins, the mob-connected head of the city's largest gambling ring. Trump attended the closing himself, and Hopkins arrived with a briefcase loaded up with $200,000 in cash, a deposit the soon-to-be felon counted at the table. Despite Hopkins' wholesale lack of verifiable income or assets, he got a loan from a Jersey bank that did business with Trump's casino. A Trump limo delivered the cash to the bank. What do you know? The government subsequently nailed Hopkins' mortgage broker, Frank Lamagra, on an unrelated charge, and he offered to give up Donald, claiming Trump, quote, participated in the money laundering and volunteering to wear a wire on him. Wow. Instead, Lombardi, who discussed the case with Giuliani personally, and with me, the writer who I'll remind you of by scrolling back here, Wayne Barrett, just so you're all on board here. Lombardi discussed the case with Giuliani and with Wayne Barrett for a 1993 Village Voice piece called The Case of the Missing Case. Well, Lombardi went straight to Donald for 2-hour-long interviews with him. Within weeks of the interviews, Donald announced he'd raise $2 million in half an hour if Rudy ran for mayor. Lamagra got no deal and was convicted, as was his mob associate, Louis Atanasio. It's Louis Haha is his nickname. I love the nicknames. Louis Haha Atanasio, who was later also nailed for 7 underworld murders. What do you know? Hopkins was convicted of running his gambling operations partly out of the Trump Tower apartment, where he was arrested. Lombardi, who expected a top appointment in a Giuliani mayoralty, conducted several other probes directly tied to Giuliani political opponents, and later testified that, quote, every day I came to work, I went to Mr. Giuliani to seek out what duties I needed to perform, unquote, closed the Trump investigation without even giving it a case number. That meant New Jersey gaming authorities would never know it existed. And, of course, in order to get his gaming licenses down there, he couldn't possibly have a file like that, so he didn't. It's hard to watch Giuliani invoke his 14-year history as a federal prosecutor when he calls for Clinton's prosecution and square it with the seedy launch of his own relationship with Trump. When Rudy was mayor, Trump hired the lobbying firm that included name partner Ray Harding, the head of the state's Liberal Party, whose ballot line had provided the margin of difference in Giuliani's 1993 election. Harding's firm quickly went from 3 lobbying clients to 92, and it steered the controversial 90-story Trump World Tower, the tallest residential tower in city history, through 3 levels of Giuliani administration approvals, despite loud opposition from community groups led by Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in America. But he lost on this to Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani working in concert. By the way, when he finished with the Trump World Tower, he sold, I believe it was, we saw the other day, 2 floors to the government of Saudi Arabia for them to use as the part of their diplomatic mission to the United Nations. Did you know that? Did we make mention of that one? I don't know if we did. I actually have a piece on that somewhere too. We'll have to pull that one out. But just so you know, does he do business with those repressive regimes where how many of our 9/11 hijackers came from? Yes, he does. And he takes money gladly from them, while accusing, of course, the Clinton Foundation of doing the same. He takes millions and puts it in his own pocket from them. They take the millions of donations and turn it into, of course, AIDS services in Africa. But they're the more corrupt, obviously. Both Harding and his son, a top Giuliani official, wound up felons. His other son, Robert Harding, a Giuliani deputy mayor, has long been a lobbyist at Rudy's current employer, Greenberg. The Giuliani administration also wrote a 1995 letter of support to HUD, Housing and Urban Development, for $365 million in mortgage insurance for Trump's Riverside South project, affirming that the West Side Yards site was in a blighted neighborhood, a contention so ludicrous that Donald had to eventually withdraw the application. A board of Giuliani appointees, pushed by Harding's firm, also approved renovations at Trump's 100 Central Park South, where Eric Trump now lives. Rudy wound up a friend speaking at Fred Trump's 1999 funeral, doing a grope scene with Donald in a 2000 Inner Circle skit, inviting Donald and Melania to his Gracie Mansion wedding, and attending Trump's 2005 Mar-a-Lago wedding. As aligned as Trump and Rudy appear, there are enough stark differences to make the embrace uncomfortable, at least if the blank slate broadcast interviewers would do a search or two, and we know that that's pretty unlikely. When Mitt Romney ran against Giuliani, he said Rudy made New York a sanctuary city, based on Giuliani's urging undocumented people to settle in the city. PolitiFact found the assertion true. As mayor, Giuliani was the top Republican champion of the assault weapons ban, sued the gun industry, and called for uniform licensing of all guns, contending that the free flow of firearms into the city from unregulated states was killing New Yorkers. Hey, sounds reasonable. Rudy was also one of the only elected pro-choice Republicans who even supported partial birth abortion. He's recently begun to perform same-sex marriages. He is, in all of these respects, an anti-Trump surrogate. Yet, Trump has said he might name Rudy to chair an immigration commission or to head Homeland Security. Trump apparently forgets that Rudy already gave us one Homeland Security secretary, his business partner and former Corrections and Police Commissioner Bernie Kerik, who blew up like a landmine before he could take office and wound up sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, partly for lying to the White House. Giuliani was widely ridiculed when, during a Trump introduction, he declared that under those 8 years before Barack Obama came along, we didn't have any successful radical Islamic terrorist attack in the United States. They all started when Clinton and Obama got into office. It was just one of an array of stunning stumbles he made on the Trump tour. And there are plenty more, but of course, we are running out of time. It wasn't, though, by the way, that for a moment he seemed to forget just that he forgot 9/11. He also, by the way, skipped past the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, unwittingly reminding us that he never mentioned it during his mayoralty, when he was so oblivious to terrorism, he put the city command center in the very complex that had already been attacked. Well, it only gets worse from there, of course, and there's a little bit more, and you should check it out. But I mean to tell you in the minute or so that we've got left what's coming up on the after show. It is, of course, Thursday. That means the chance to speak Italian. Thank God it's Giovedì. That's what they call it. Ruth Bader Ginsburg hopes cooler heads will prevail on a Supreme Court vacancy. Do you know who died recently? Yeah, there's this vacancy, and they got to deal with it. The Department of Justice catches Texas violating the court order against its voter suppression laws. Whoops, gee whiz, what are we going to do, arrest Texas? And former Secretary of State Colin Powell displays the satellite photos of weapons-grade aluminum tubes that proves he never emailed Hillary Rodham Clinton on how to violate the Records Act. Okay, well, good job there on that one. On the last half, we report that the teachers at Texas high schools and colleges are rebelling against a textbook that portrays Mexicans as lazy drunks prone to violence. Oh, on Mondays? Only on Mondays. And there's more.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Well, here's one more thing for the last half. Big data and algorithms are reducing the cost of fixing the Flint, Michigan water crisis. How about that? Yay, data. Way to go on that one. All of that, of course, plus the Connect, Unite, Act, Daily Kos community calendar, and more on the after show with Wink and Justice coming up next. Love it. They cover all the stuff we don't. See you tomorrow.